Brian Lara, if you asked him a question, he answered it like you were the only person in the room. I mean, I cannot tell people how bad I was at sport. The fun started, Neha, when other women started coming into sports journalism. So that I could share rooms with them, we're on tour. You could sit and talk to each other. 15 years old when India won the World Cup. And I remember covering that event, writing down the scores in a diary that I have somewhere with me. But in a large press conference, you can ask a question, and you'll be responding. Yeah. And you've lost that because it's a little more schooled. The great thing about Yuvraj is that Yuvraj is this huge superstar-like person. But in a press conference, he can literally talk to people one-on-one. I have seen tennis fall and badminton rise. Everything that comes up, you think is dispensable. Koi to aur aa jayega. That you're able to dabao the athlete a little bit. This one is talking too much. Chup karo usko, koi to aur aa jayega.
Hello everyone and welcome to the second episode of Women in Sports powered by the Global Institute of Sports Business and WordsWork. Here we talk about the women who run the sports industry, not necessarily sportswomen. And with me today is who we can call the first woman in sports journalism in India. I have with me Sharda Ugra, who's one of the most respected sports journalists in India, and she has been covering sports since the 1980s, where women in journalism, sports journalism especially, was not even heard of. She's one of the most respected journalists even today across athletes and in the industry. We're very happy to have her with us today.
Sharda, you have been so much of an inspiration to a lot of women, including myself. And welcome to Women in Sports. Really, really privileged to have you here.
Hi, Neha. So happy to be here. So happy to be in the company of other women that are there in sport and look at our world in a way that people don't really like to see. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for being here. It's so nice to be even recognized as a woman in sport. It's like I think it's pretty special to be able to count yourself as part of that large group all over the world.
You absolutely own that. And I just felt that over the years, I remember when I started my journey in sports about 16, 17 years ago, yours was one of the first interviews I had worked with on motorsport, if you recall, in India Today. And I was so impressed with the amount of detail that you went into and in terms of understanding the format, how it worked, how the story came out. And I was mighty impressed then, and I'm probably even more impressed now after all these years of knowing you. So it's been a privilege, seriously. So thanks a lot. And today I'm going to turn the table on you. So you're going to be on the other side of the table and I'm getting to ask the questions. So that's another exciting role reversal we're going to have here for you. But I just wanted to start from the beginning. Of course, people know you for your writing. People know you for your immense knowledge of sport. But where did it even start? I mean, did you enjoy sport growing up? Where did you grow up? What was the journey of little Sharda, where she started?
So, little Sharda, as I keep getting told by my mom and my parents, that I was very, very, what's the word in Hindi? Chanchal. I was like very active and moving around and, like doing crazy things. I once tried jumping out of a second floor balcony. I didn't know it was like a second floor balcony. I just climbed out. I said, oh, I've seen people get out of a balcony. Let me try. So that was obviously in my DNA from wherever, I don't know. I was a very crappy athlete, but I loved playing sport. So we grew up. I actually had a really privileged kind of a growing up in a housing a colony set up by a factory, a company that has its factory and it's almost like a gated community before there were gated communities. So this was in Bhandup, which was seen as a very unfancy place to live in Bombay. When I went to St. Xavier's College, my friend said, do you need a visa to go to Bhandup? This is all South Bombay kids, you want to read them up. So we had like two sets of sort of accommodation around sports playing fields, open places to play. So I grew up in Bombay in the 1970s and 80s. I'm born 68, with access to a badminton court, a swimming pool, a place for cricket, a place for football separate. And, I was so used to the fact that you could play. And I ended up playing mostly with a lot of boys.
And this was rare back then, right? To have so much access to sport. It was very rare. Right?
Absolutely. Because these sort of housing colonies, they used to call them colonies because they were colonies connected to these companies had set up these factories in the suburbs of Bombay. So Godrej had a very giant sort of colony, I assume. And Gaskin Williams, where my dad worked, at a slightly smaller one. Then there was no. And the school I went to was Holy Cross Convent School. And for non-Bombay people, they won't understand. But this school I went to in Thane also had a big playground. Now there are schools in South Bombay where there is no playground. These are posh
There's
schools,
nothing.
access playground somewhere else. So I grew up with this space and this idea of sport. I was I was tall for my age. I'm still tall by the average Indian woman's this thing. So everyone in my school thought I'll play basketball and do shot put and all. I just wanted to play cricket, badminton, go swimming. With I was not really a single sport person. Like, I always would like to have been part of a team and whatever. And a little bit of a chicken, I think, in that sense. With other people around you, you feel a little bit more secure. I love playing doubles in badminton rather than singles. Just needed the company kind of a thing. So that's how I grew up in sport. And I wasn't bad, but I used to watch it, read it. My dad was interested. He had played a lot of sport in his school and his university. So it just was part of my life growing up. And I said, oh, how nice it would be to become a sport. I was not going to do science or maths or whatever. I said, I will do arts. Nice it would be to become a sports journalist, but chalo, I'll become a journalist. So that was my sort of career option in that
So
time.
started with journalism.
I
Got
said,
it.
I'll do that.
And was midday your first stint? Midday was your first stint at that point?
Yes. Midday was my first job, and there were the only two jobs you could do when you did humanities in that time was journalism or advertising. That was seemed to be the only two. Hotel management, number three. So midday was my first job, and I just came to it. I mean, like full marks. What's the thing that they say in the current scenario? They say pips or pops or something to them, and online you have this phrase I've forgotten. Like full marks to them for even saying for giving a chance. There was no women in sports journalism at the time. You didn't see women in sports grounds other than if they were female athletes, and you barely saw female athletes. So the 80s was the time of PT Usha, so she was like the most foremost athletic person in front of us there, a runner. But it was, so the midday job when it came out, because I love cricket. I cannot tell people how bad I was at playing sport. And a lot of my writing comes from this sort of sense of awe that people are able to, I see people doing well, playing well. So at this point, I go swimming. I've been swimming for a year. I can't swim again from that swimming pool I told you. I go swimming for about a year at a local pool in Bangalore, and I am so bad. As in, my technique is all wrong, but I'm swimming. I can swim. I can do 100 meters. I don't have a problem, And
I
then,
think it's the passion. It's the passion that drove you. It drives me too, by the way. So, by the way, even I've never played any sport as such except for swimming, funnily enough, in my life. And all my school friends are like, how did you get into sport of all people? We never saw you in any
how did
team
you
or
get into
anything.
sport? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, I just did.
Yeah.
So it's about the passion, I guess. But you literally were the first woman in sports PR or sports journalism in India, and you still are in many ways the first woman of sports journalism in India and also in the
Thank
world, I
you.
would say. So
Yeah.
it's been a very interesting journey. But back then you said you were literally the only one. Did it feel lonely or it didn't matter? Especially when you went to the ground, you went to the press box, you were surrounded by all people who were quite into it. Was it intimidating in any way?
It was intimidating to start with, but I didn't feel lonely. So I am fundamentally, which I've discovered now, and I can see this with great. I am like what is a solitary person? I think in the world there are solitary people who are happy being solitary. Which doesn't mean necessarily single, but they're just solitary in their head. So when I went to a press box, I didn't get intimidated per se. I did get intimidated, but not lonely, because I found somebody I could relate to in that space, which is usually a scorer or an official or a walkman. So I could watch a match. Nobody wanted to talk to me because I obviously looked like some freakoid from somewhere who had landed up in their little male space. And I just sat there and I had the walkman on and I would watch the match and I would take scores. And what I found is that athletes were happy to talk to you after a little bit of, whatever. It helped that it was a city paper that I was working for. Midday had a solid presence in sport because of Sports Week, and its sports pages were very well known. And once you got a couple of bylines out and stories out, and then people were like, Achha, this person this is her job, this is what
she knows what she's doing. Yeah,
she knows what she's doing. It looks okay. It seems all right. Has not misquoted anybody. No drama. Nothing. So it wasn't lonely. The fun started, Neha, when other women started coming into sports journalism. So that I could share rooms with them. We're on tour. You could sit and talk to each other and bitch and complain and moan and say watch it and whatever. So that's the fun start. It wasn't a sense of loneliness to begin with, but a sense of like camaraderie when women started to join the profession.
But in your early days, you said you used to sometimes sit with the scorer, sit with the technicians. Was that an interesting way for you to understand the sport better or get a deeper
Oh,
sense of,
totally, totally.
yeah.
I think I approached every sort of sport that I went to with the sense of I am here to learn. So tell me what you're going to tell me. So, like one journalist once asked me, "Oh, do you know the LBW rule?" This is some story. So I said, "Yeah, I know the LBW rule." He said, but they say women don't know technical aspects. I said, "See, I'm not going to tell Dilip Venksatkar how to bat, but I can tell you when he gets out playing a bad shot. That's what I can do." And that was my sort of premise on which I worked, and I went into every sport. I mean, I don't think all sports journalists know everything about all sports. We have to put that down here. I went into every sport with humility and said, "Teach me, and I will learn," kind of a thing. And the scorers were happy to tell you. The scorers were happy to say, and actually in cricket you had some 5 or 6 shots that were described in 5 or 6 ways, and you just knew what was what because you heard it on commentary, seen it on TV, tried it yourself and failed. So it was good to sit and chat with them because they'll tell you stories, they'll tell you whatever, and you'll ask them, "Listen, when's the last time this guy got a boundary of so and so bowler?" If you're watching, he'll tell you, "Okay, this is when it was." This is so you always had that sense of partnership and almost a teaching, and the scoring community in cricket was fantastic. They're always great fun to chat with. They have all the stories also. So it was fun. I mean, I really enjoyed it. Watched a lot of domestic cricket. I reckon all the scorers had their little quirks. There's a scorer in Pune. I knew the scorers in Wankhede Stadium in Bombay. And by the way, this was writing scoring at that time.
Yeah, physically
Writing by
writing
pen.
it. Yeah,
No
yeah,
computers. Physically, no
yeah.
computers. So we had typewriters and stuff. It was a very, very good learning. It was a very, very good sort of, beginning in the profession. And you go in with humility because I think it just makes you ask a lot of better questions. I think you're able to ask.
And then surprisingly, nobody stops you or nobody's not there to answer. So I think the idea is not to go with those
Correct.
preconceived notions ki, who'll listen to me, who'll respond to me. I think the idea is to just go in all out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, just go in. I was just grateful to be there. I was just like, there was a sense of gratitude, like, do not disturb me. I am doing work. You don't have to ask me anything. Just let me be. You don't have to
Yeah.
talk to me. Let me do what I'm doing, kind of a thing. And as I've always said this in previous conversations I've had, that the midday organization, Neha, I cannot tell you how superb it was. Because at that time, there were women in important positions everywhere in that organization. It was not like we were invisible or the number wasn't enough. Our city reporter was a woman. Our main crime reporter was a woman. We had two people who were in charge of the desk. The desk heads. They were women. People in features. There were 2 or 3 women writers as well. The top news reporter. There were women everywhere. So there was a
So it was
great.
very ahead of its time anyway in
Pretty
that sense,
much,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
very much a great, uh, and they give you a lot of confidence when you went out into the world. That they are there for me. That's my
They have
team.
their back. They have your back basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
That's my team. It's not all these people in the press box who are ignoring me because I happen to be female. So that was fantastic. And I didn't realize it then, and I'm looking at it now and saying, suppose I had gone into an organization which was full of men, a sports department full of men. I mean, I was the sports department. There was nobody else who covered sports. I was the sports department. I was a copy editor. I was the writer. I was
All in
the
one.
tune, all in one.
Yeah.
I was the person who made the telephone book, and then of course a few more people came after that. But that said, that organization that I stepped into first, it's very, very rare for there to be that many women in it. India Today, where I worked
Yeah.
after some time, had women, but that the whole vibe was very different at the India Today office in Delhi. Cricinfo, wonderful working environment, very few women. Number is small compared to their presence in the editorial space. The numbers are not the balance is not that great. But midday, super, like super. This is like 1989 to
Which is very early
1993 that we are
days. It's
talking about.
very, very early days. Yeah, yeah. And in fact,
Very.
even I came in much, much later, but even at that point, it was rare. But I'm still seeing a fairly healthy
Mm.
trajectory of women in sports journalism from where it was in the 80s. So definitely, I think you were one of the very few.
80s
It was just you probably to a large
yeah.
extent. But then I think there has been,
For 1 year,
yeah,
yeah.
there's been a decent number of very, very cool women who
Yes,
understand sport, who are passionate about sport, and who are able to write about it.
yes,
And I think that you've
yeah.
seen that journey, right, from then to now. And where do you think it stands now?
I must tell you a little fun thing
Hmm.
about cricket when I'm going there. Even today, that there's a batch of cricketers that I can actually message and say, "Yaar, ye what is this nonsense going on?" Then we'll have a little 5 minute gossip and a complaining session. So that sort of a thing that you built very early in your career, that is still there with a small bunch. Not you guys, no chance. I mean, forget it. Why should they? I'm an old person, but that once you establish a sort of a certain sense of, I keep saying this, that every journalist every cricket journalist has their own
Hmm.
team. This is that the team they grow up with as journalists. They happen to be traveling with them, and the more at that time, they see them more. They hang out. They don't hang out with them, not too much, but but a reasonable amount. So you have a little clutch of players, which is your
Yeah.
team. And my team is Saurav Ganguly's
Hmm.
team.
Got it.
2000,
That's
2005,
the lot,
2008.
basically.
So those
Hmm.
guys, that's the lot. That's my team, because I did a lot of. So all those guys, I'll send them a message and I'll say, please,
Hmm.
yeah, I need to check this thing, and you'll get a reply. Inevitably, they'll have a conversation and let's say whatever. Sometimes they'll say no, no,
Yeah.
please, but bless them, they do reply. Now coming back to your question about the women in sport thing, and yeah, I must tell you this. At one point, a few years ago, I think 2018 or 19, I don't know why, when this whole Me Too ka
Hmm.
chakkar started and everything. How many women are there in sports journalism? Let me find out. Like writing, not television, but
Yeah.
basically writing in digital space or in newspapers or whatever. So how many do you think there were? So I asked someone who's in the SJFI, he said, oh, about 2025. How many do you think there are?
I would say
What's the
around,
number?
I'm hoping around 40 plus. I don't know, roughly.
60
60
plus.
plus.
60
Yeah.
plus.
Yeah.
In 2018, 19. And so I was so happy when I got that
Yeah.
number. And I'm not even talking about those fantastic girls,
Hmm.
Suprita,
Hmm.
Rika, all the girls on Shivani, on all the TV girls. I'm not even talking about the TV girls. I'm
Just
just
print.
talking about writing people, just print. And so people who worked on desk,
Hmm.
people who worked in organizations, who worked, with or without
Hmm.
bylines, they were involved in the sports business. I was so happy that there were 60 plus. And this is only English language, right? So people said, no, there are not that many in any of the regional languages. I wouldn't know. But I would hope that at least it's like, thoda to it'll be
Yeah.
close to 100. In Bengali, I actually knew Bengali has got a lot of women's sports journalists who cover football and whatever. There's a good number of them. So I was just hoping that there'll be some more. And now you've got a lot of independent journalists doing their own thing.
Correct.
So it's a good number. I cannot tell you how happy it was when I saw that number. And I have a list. I actually have a list with
Super. I
me
think
of
that's
all
so
the.
good. And I think we all need to bring them together a little more. And even in our side, like when I'm talking about communications from my end, or by talking about sports management, or even entrepreneurship in sports, I'm
Yeah,
slowly
yeah,
seeing an upswing in it. And I think it's really positive. But I think somewhere down the line, that professional training gets really important. So I think women need to start
yeah,
considering sports as a career option as well. And not
yeah.
necessarily just because it's an athlete, but I think a lot of women just need to be open to that idea that there is an amazing opportunity for us here in the sports industry as
Various
well.
fields.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
various fields. It doesn't have to be either journalism or PR. It can be 150 million other things that are there. For example, data, in sports science, in sport. What I know that there are some in sports science, but
correct.
great thing is that the numbers are becoming more common. And this was when I found this number. Since you asked me about it, I'm not going to rant. I've gone a little bit. All it was by sending emails to 5 or 6 people. So can you find out what the number is? Who are these people? And we got these 60 names ahead. I was so happy. I don't know
But
what
you
to
should
do.
do something with that now. That's a database worth exploring
No,
and
no,
doing
everybody
something
said,
with it.
see, people looking for database.
Ah, no.
So
But to, I think,
everybody
bring
kept
them
saying,
together is
I think we
useful.
should start
Yeah.
an association and all. Some guy said, I think you should start an association. I said, first of all, I'm not listening to anything that is being instructed to me by a guy. Not happening. Do not
Yeah,
tell
but
me
I
what to
think
do.
there's a lot of learning. There's a lot of learning we can
Of
give
course,
to each
of
other.
course, of
I
course,
think
of
what
course.
you've built over the years is so much experience, which you may be taking for granted sometimes also, but it's really worthwhile to pass that down to other people
Yeah,
and hopefully
yeah.
get more women
I
into
mean,
the
I try
business.
and
So,
help. People
yeah.
reach out to me, they ask
Hmm.
me things, they send me ads. I try and help as much I can, but not in an organized way. because so this there are people who are sort of like I said, not engineered. They like doing this. Like I'm part of a network of women in media. It's a network. It's not an association. It's not an organization. It's a network. The
Okay.
all women who are working in media, NWMI. You'll find it on the internet. It is extraordinary what they do. It is
Super.
just mind-bogglingly fantastic what they do. So they help each other. Somebody's there, they'll put out these little, sort of courses and toolkits for this is how you cover this kind of this is how you cover this beat. This is what's happening. Okay, the elections are on. Let's help each other. It is fabulous. I do not seem to have the energy or the mind space to do it, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who want to do it. I'll be absolutely happy to help.
Definitely. I'm going to take you up on that one. But tell me, you're known for your passion for cricket. Cricket obviously comes first in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Why cricket? Why was that particular sport so appealing to you?
I'm a child of 83. That's the answer. That's the answer. That's the simple, the only and the simplest answer is that I'm a child of 83. So I was about 13, no, once again, born 68, 78, 15 years old when India won the World Cup. And I remember covering that event, writing down the scores in a diary that I have somewhere with me. And India won that. We were not expected to win it. And it was just that. I think it's that because at the time, Prakash Padukone had won the All England. I used to play badminton. I used to do my kachra swimming. We used to play hockey. We didn't have too many hockey sticks. So, but cricket was the thing that just gripped you and just sort of swept you and took you along. So 83 is a big part of it. 83, Sunil Gavaskar, that whole era of the kind of players that we were. We had a pretty good 80s when it came to overseas tests and so on. So I 85 World Championship of Cricket. That's what sort of swept me away. I love watching, following, writing on other sports, absolutely without a smidgen of doubt. And I can go months without writing about cricket and enjoy every week that I write on something else. But when someone asks me what is your favorite sport, it'll come back to that. It'll come back to cricket, because of the fact that I spent my life growing up with it, being obsessed by it, reading, writing, whatever, listening, watching TV. So it's just that. And it's been an interesting time to grow up because you've seen the changes that have happened in
There's
Indian
been a huge
world
transition, I
cricket.
would say, from the 80s when you started to today, right?
Huge. Yes, and we were like the kachra. People used to treat Indians and cricket and Indian cricketers like rubbish. Like they're nothing, and we were like the ones who used to be fighting through all cricket was Western oriented in its way of seeing as well. And we were saying, listen, our sport is different. We are different. And this is why we are so good. In 1991, 1992, the arrival of cable TV and the understanding by the BCCI / Mr. Dalmia, Mr. Bindra, that you could monetize this sport at a point and the only people that picked up what was happening in advance were the Australians. That's why they started this Border Gavaskar Trophy. So let's keep going every 2 years because every time they come to India, people are interested. We'll get money, and every time we go there, it's better for our image, for our players, for everything. Australians didn't like to come to India. There was much grumbling and whatever in the 60s and 70s and 80s. But it was the professionalization and the fact that cricket was televised and made for television. Every over ke baad ad.
So, So I think it was the monetization also of the sport, which eventually leads to its longevity.
Of the sport through television and this large diaspora audience and all of that just followed. It's basically when the game went everywhere in the world, there were lots of Indians everywhere in the world.
True.
To see.
Do you recall your first international assignment or first memorable assignment and what went on in that?
My first international assignment. So this is the year 1980. I joined midday in 1989. In 1991, they sent me to cover a cricket. Even my first international going abroad.
Yeah.
Correct. Or you're saying
anything international or big, basically. Yeah.
So no, because I was the only midday reporter. Every time there was a test match, I'd be the one who would go, to cover the test match. So I was covering the big events for midday. Not all of them, but anything that was. They said, okay, you'll get something decent out of it. And also, Neha, remember, this is the age where Tendulkar is just arriving in the world. He's just making his mark and his presence. And he's from Bombay, which is where I grew up, spent the first 30 years of my life in Bombay. And so that international assignment was one. And in that Sharjah tournament, South Africa was being readmitted into the International Cricket Council. They'd been banned for so many years. No one had gone to play there. We couldn't travel to South Africa on our passports at that time, or Israel, by the way, 2 countries where Indians couldn't go. And the 3 officials were coming to talk to the ICC, International Cricket Council, about readmission. Me and this Kuldeep Lal from AFP. Kuldeep Lal said, I am going, would you like to come? At 2 o'clock in the morning, their flight is landing. I said, of course. And we went there and we met them for the first time. And so at that time, it was just some work you were doing. Some official had come, you asked questions, you got an interview, you did whatever. And now you look at it, it was a huge moment. It was a huge moment.
You didn't realize the gravity of the moment at that point.
You didn't realize the gravity of the moment until you look at it. I mean, it was a great story. It got great coverage in the paper. Midday was damn happy. I went and interviewed Dr. Ali Bakar for a Sunday midday article or whatever. Also fantastic. These guys are great. They just spoke so well. But now I look back at it and said, oh, that was that. That's what happened. And the big welcome back into international cricket came from the Indians, came from BCCI.
Yeah.
South Africa played its first international games after readmission in Calcutta. And it was just, they were welcomed by like tens of thousands of people. And it was such a big deal, for them to come back. And mind you, South Africa as an independent country, Mandela has just been freed. It's 1991. So this is what's happening. And now you look back at it and say, oh, I was in that sort of
moment. Yeah.
It was that moment. The other big moment is, of course, Abhinav Bindra winning gold medal at the Olympics. I mean, like, you cannot match that.
Did you not predict that? Because I saw a recent tweet from him, by the way. You saw that, where he beautifully praised you and obviously deserving. So when he said you predicted the win.
I did predict it in that sense because he was just feeling bad that day. He was just feeling so wretched. I knew him for about 4 or 5 years and I met him and he was feeling so awful. As a journalist, your first response is, okay, let me make the athlete feel a little better. So I said, listen, I'm going to retire. I said, don't talk nonsense. I said, don't talk rubbish. You're going to win a gold at Beijing. And he was just looking at me with a sad face and whatever. And I just said it because in my mind, I said, he missed the final in Sydney by 1 point or some half point of usuals, 10 meter shooting ka there, minus little, missed the final in that, made the final in Athens, and finished 7th, but made the final. Indians didn't make the final. Only I think Anjali had made one final. I think Abhinav was the second. Abhinav made, so Anjali made, Suma made, and Abhinav made the final. So he was just the first Indian man into an Olympic final. And so I said, obviously, logically by Beijing, that's it. He's going to get something out of Beijing. And it just came out. That's it. You're going to win gold. And when it happened, I had completely forgotten this. I had completely forgotten what I told him. He's the guy who he said, you said this to me.
He reminded you. Okay.
I completely forgot.
That brings me to an important point because I see a lot of interviews happening with athletes and difficult when they're in, and there's so many tight spots, there's so many difficult moments for them, but it's rare that one sees that bit of empathy coming in saying, okay, for a moment, let me drop the story and let me just be a human being and console or, get to the person from that level. And you have done that over the years. And I'm sure it's not something that's deliberately happening. It's probably just who you are. But isn't it something we all need to remember how to balance the aspect of getting that story and getting that piece out rather than just sitting and understanding the athlete's mindset and respecting it?
I mean, it's just my nature to do this. I feel bad when athletes lose. You just feel absolutely awful because I grew up, again, we are talking now, Neha, this is before, I grew up at a time when India did not win anything in Olympics. Not even hockey gold medal. We didn't win any medal. Since the time I grew up, since the time I started understanding sport, we won this one medal in Moscow and then we went 16 years without winning anything. So for me, every athlete's effort to get to a place is always important. They lost, I felt bad that they lost. People say you shouldn't get so emotionally involved. Too bad, it's sport, we all get involved. I think that if that athlete is sitting and talking to you, your story is there somewhere. You don't have to get an extra quote out of them. Maybe as for television, you do need to get that quote, but your story is there somewhere. And also, if you make that athlete feel slightly better, you'll possibly get a better answer out of them. You probably get him
anywhere. Exactly. Yeah.
It's fine. I feel bad for you, whatever. And the way I see this gone particularly, it's almost like you have lost that, I was going to say lost your humanity, which is a bit excessive, but you have lost that sense of one-on-one sort of exchange, and not just a one-on-one interview, but in a large press conference, you can ask a question, and you'll be responding.
Yeah.
That's it. You've lost that because it's a little more schooled. It's a little bit more controlled by gate kept in that sense.
Gatekeepers.
And
Yeah.
but that's what happens when a sport grows so huge. Like I don't think anyone will be able to get exclusive quotes from Haaland at the moment. It's not happening, or Vettel or whatever it is. So that's the consequence of sport growing. And in India, sport is growing in smaller sports in various places. So we are still at that place that you can have that conversation with that athlete, and you can still sort of make a connect with them at some point. And they'll tell you fantastic things. And I keep telling people, ask the stupid question. It's absolutely fine. Absolutely,
Yeah.
not a really, really dumb question for social media.
Of course.
But
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
a question that seems weird and see you never know what will happen in that sense. So I think if that athlete there looks like a wreck in front of you, that's your story. You don't have to make him feel worse. He's already
Exactly. He's already there.
He's
Exactly.
already there.
But
that
coming back to cricket post midday, then you were still working in various places, but then you started also writing books, and you've written at least 2 books that I
ghosted.
know of. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now tell me, what was your role in those 2 situations, if you can talk about it, and how easy or
Yeah.
difficult was it to through someone else's opinion in the most logical and honest way possible?
It's simple if the people that you're talking to are willing to share, so which a lot of the time. So John Wright, who's the coach of the Indian team, the first foreign coach or the overseas coach of the Indian team, he wanted this done. He was very, very professional about it, went about it in time, did it X, Y, Z. And what you then have to do, which you don't realize how difficult it is that you have to leave your ego at the door and say, this is not my book, it is his book. Let it
Exactly.
sound
Okay.
him. Let it not sound like me trying some fancy lines. It's still a struggle to try and crush yourself there. But it was a great experience for me because, see, the fact is, women, we can't go into dressing rooms, right? And I'm from a generation that, Neha, where you could not even have drinks with guys. Like, there's no way that you went. There were no bars for women to go and have drinks in the 1990s in Bombay. Yeah, you could walk into, as in, there must have been bars, but you need to go with a man. And then man
Yeah.
had to take a shield. If you wanted to go to a general, normal country liquor / cold beer soldier,
Correct. So where
that
do you
kind
have those informal conversations or those,
yeah, you
where
don't.
you get the real stories out? Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. So you don't do those kind of things. And there were no pubs. Maybe they were in Bangalore. I was not here. So that particularly the John Wright book just became a chance to see this whole mad world that was actually there, and to understand how does this work, what's going on, what is the dynamic. I just enjoyed that. I still have all the transcripts and the recording. I think at recordings I've deleted the recording, but I have the transcript somewhere of all those conversations because there's just stories and there's so much of it there. And it just adds a greater layer of understanding as to team dynamics, how it works, what's important, what's not, what do people really get pissed off about, and that kind of thing. So, and similarly with the Yuvraj book, it was just that Raj had gone through that mad, horrific, experience. And all the time during the World Cup, he was coughing. He said, no, it's stress and all that. I said, no, what's stress? The great thing about Yuvraj is that Yuvraj is this huge superstar-like person. But in a press conference, he can literally talk to people one-on-one. And I'm not anybody. Like, he'll talk to anyone like you're one person. Like,
and he's got those one-on-one relationships also with many people. I've seen that actually.
Yeah, he's got that sort of a thing. The other person who was very good at one-on-one, I've just been for one press conference, not one, more than that, it was Brian Lara. Brian Lara, if you asked him a question, he answered it like you were the only person in the room. It's a very rare thing. It doesn't happen at all. So the Yuvraj thing also was because he had gone through this incredible experience of the World Cup and matches, and I covered all the India games in that. So you saw him through his whole sort of a journey, and he was happy to do it. And he had a good recollection of his experience, which you would conventionally, if you say, oh, this is Yuvraj, this is like the great rock stars, the cricketer and all. He has a different way about it. There's a lot of rock star in him for sure. I saw his orange Lamborghini and I was like, this is too much. But
that's one side of it.
That's one side of it. The other side is that he's willing to, you'll land up at his house in Gurgaon at 4 o'clock. He said, Rajma chawal khayenge. It was like, he's just got up. Anyhow, so that is just the thing. So it was fantastic. It's not, I mean, there's a certain discipline to doing it, which you have to just get stuck into it and do, and leave yourself behind kind of thing, and make it sound like that like that person. And if you get a chance, so everyone wants to write open, okay? And all of us in our hearts, we feel we have to write open in some way. But no, open is Andre Agassi from Las Vegas. Yuvraj Singh from Chandigarh. John Wright is from New Zealand. You figure out what their voices are going to sound
Every
like.
story is different. So there's no benchmarking to this. It can't be also probably.
It shouldn't be, because then, if Yuvraj Singh ends up sounding like not himself but some great intellectual being, you'll say lies.
It's not convincing. It has to be him, right?
It has to be.
So I guess you need to get into the skin of the person. But with UV, I think the greatest part was his whole comeback, and it probably gave us a sense of how much the mindset matters. And
Yeah.
you've seen this with many athletes who've been through the ups and the downs. And how much do you think the mindset matters, and how much do you think that's contributed towards a lot of failures and successes
The thing
as
about
you've observed these athletes?
Yeah, so UV and a lot of athletes are very sort of relaxed, especially the ones who are like, not the sort of bristly kind of athletes, the ones that are sort of, I am so very cool, I'm a little bit of an intellectual, these various sort of tropes that they have, not tropes, and that's their personality, they can't help it, they're like that. There is a movement there. So this is the thing I'll say. I am not by nature, I am not a competitive person. My friends will laugh in my face when they hear this. They'll say, don't talk lies, you are rubbish, you're talking crap, you know it immediately. But I don't think I'm a competitive person. I feel I'm a little bit of a chicken when it comes to competition. Sometimes, maybe, whatever. In like top level athletes, there is a streak of competitiveness that cannot be matched by anything else that normal people have. Like no comparison. So Yuvraj was like that. He'll be sitting there, he's answering one question. You must have like seen him and all. And you ask him one question that is either about his team not being so great, his form not being so good, and you can just see like he gets a little bit like, what? And it's not a what in his voice, it's a what in his expression. Like, what are you trying to say? So that's the thing that these athletes, I think that their competitiveness and their drive comes from there. I mean, it's not a thing that like us sort of elite athletes, non-athletes only. I don't think we understand that. And you'll see that in the height of competition. Like you'll see it with Gopi Chand if he's going through. His face is like absolutely calm when he used to play. But inside you could see, I am not going to die in front of you. You are going to die today. It was like that. That thing, there's a quality there. It's literally got a texture. You can feel it when it's happening. That thing is the one that you cannot. Or like even Abhinav's that last shot in I was like a wreck. I was gone. I didn't even know whether it was his last shot, not his last shot. My whole body had gone into like shock, collapse, vomit, all of that. He just nailed it. So it's that nailing it in that last shot, that's the thing that these guys have. That you are able to see that carries them through. It's almost a ziddipana, that this sense of stubbornness that I will not die today. It is not, not today. I'll have a bad day, but it's not going to be today. And that's
not going to be today.
Push over, when they're going through a bad time or whatever. Similarly with Rahul Dravid. Rahul Dravid looks, you're sitting there, he's speaking for 15 minutes and he has said some 3 things that you're saying, but what has he said? And then you ask him a question that would have just like been a little bit of pinprick about the team or himself or his form or his strike rate or whatever it was, and then you just watch what will happen.
And you see that switch.
The switch. And I love watching.
And then you recognize that. You just sit back and see, okay, now what's going to happen?
Yeah. It's great. I love it. I love watching it because you see that that's why you're reporting on sport. That's why you're not them. That's why you have to tell people how fantastic they are, So it's
That's true. It's true. I think we owe it to them to tell their stories as efficiently, effectively, and honestly as possible as well. I think that's
Neeraj, have you seen Neeraj? Right? Neeraj is running. He's got the sweet face. He's running and all. But the javelin has left his hand and he has turned around and he has snarled like one lion into the face of the camera. And you see,
and that's so unlike the other side of him that you see.
That's that's the competitor. Yeah. And he doesn't even know where the javelin has gone. It has left his hand and he has turned around and he has screamed. And he's got that face, that's his face. That's his game face. So that's the thing that's there. We are like nothing compared to them. And you have to just see what is that? Yeah.
But isn't that what drives us also to do? See, by no measure what we do in sports, it's not easy. There's a lot of work that goes behind it.
Yes.
But isn't this the one thing that probably keeps us going every day, that we get the privilege to see these moments and to learn from these sports people, these incredible sports people on a daily basis. I think I'm still learning every single day when I have
completely. Every day is like, tell me more. Yeah, I want story. Keep talking, story the keep talking.
True.
So no,
It's
it
true.
is that. It is that. And now I don't travel much. Yeah, so I don't travel much after I was let go from ESPN. I don't travel too much. I don't this thing. But even now when you're watching, you can see what's happening. You can see things changing. You can see body language and whatever people do. And I mean the Indian women's hockey team at Tokyo. I mean, who
Yeah. That
plays?
moment, oh my God.
Who are these? Where did they come from? These girls, so it's that kind of thing, and you can see it on TV. That's the great thing about TV. That TV has many flaws and
You see
faults.
the emotions.
You
Yeah,
see
correct.
everything absolutely. You can see it in long shot, and you can see it close up as well. And it's so good. And how much of a sport you'll watch, there'll be a time where something will just switch it on for you again. You can be,
Hmm.
you say, oh, you're all sports journalist, you're cynical, whatever.
But now tell me, on the overall sports industry, I think there's been so much of a change also from the 80s to now, which you've
Yeah,
observed on a
yeah.
larger level. And in a way, a lot of it is for the better because when I started out, which is also quite a bit later, it would be so seasonal. Like I would be out of work for a good solid
Oh,
4 to 5 months and
what about
nothing
it?
to do. And then it would all be just, focused on one part of the year. As of today, there is something to do. And I'm not just talking about cricket, I'm talking about other sports as well. And the whole upswing of the league culture coming in, corporates coming into the sports space, there's so much going on. Do you think it's moving in the right direction, or at least
You can,
we've gotten somewhere?
yeah,
Yeah,
you can tell me better about sort of corporate money or so on. But what about kabaddi? Just how,
incredible. Yeah,
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 where out of nothing, not out of nothing, out of this like deep underlying culture that is there came this thing, came this incredibly television marketed package, whatever it is. You must not deny them this sort of moment. I mean, IPL is great, but I think the Kabaddi League is genius in terms of how they were able to put this product together. Anyone can sell cricket in India. Anybody
yeah,
can sell cricket. Anybody.
correct.
Seriously,
Yeah.
it's not tough. It's not hard. I mean, and as a journalist, I'm saying this with such confidence. You can imagine how easy it is because you are in the business yourself. But to sell something like kabaddi, it's just so to me that is the big sign that things are changing. And the fact that there are these multiple sports that you can look into. There are these multiple athletes that you can follow. The prime example, and I'm going to go on my absolutely pet rant of the moment, is how tennis has died and badminton
Yeah.
has risen. We've seen
Mm.
tennis die. So you have seen, I mean, when I tell people that India used to play World Group in Davis Cup, they say, really, for qualification for what? I said, no, they were in the World Group. They were part of the World Group. So it's like, so I have seen tennis fall and badminton rise. And it's the multiplicity of sports that are there for
Mm.
Indians to look at and to pin their hopes on and to follow through social media, through television, through whatever it is great. All that so cricket is behemoth numbers, like crazy numbers, but everything else, like I said, at least try and be okay. Cricket is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the sport. At least try and be number six. At least all
Exactly.
sports should aim to be number six. A
Mm.
tennis is saying, okay, we are thinking about the great, what I don't know what tennis is doing. It's in a very bad space. But the arrival and the advent of other sports, athletics,
Mm.
women in sport, the title of what we are talking about, women in
Yeah.
Indian sport, their proliferation and their success has been so much fun to follow and to watch and to see them change. It's just been like, they,
And
they
what I
are
like
God.
is it's
There
now
is a
no
God slash goddess
longer.
they're listening. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And I also feel it's not limited to certain pockets where this talent is coming from. I'm
Yes.
seeing a lot more wide span of the reach in terms of the kind
Okay.
of talent coming from different parts of the country, from different kind of sports. And in many regions, it's become a matter of pride for these girls to
Yeah,
emerge from these regions
yeah,
and come and represent. So
yeah. No,
overall, it's in a better space, of
what you're
course.
saying about
Hmm.
region is also interesting, and the sort of the widespread sort of thing about it is that you realize how much talent there is in the country and why have we been sitting on our hands through the 80s and most of the 90s, sitting on our hands and saying we'll do hockey, and in the Olympics we'll do hockey and chalo okay, and then there's some badminton player called Gopichand. How has he come? Where has he come from? So we sat on our hands for so long because we had, and here is the point at which you stop me, shit administration. You know, yeah, so that's the reason. Forget
Hmm.
our money, government, ministry, SAI, whatever. Shit administration. So we have so
Hmm.
much talent. And the difficulty or the flip side of having this talent is that everything that comes up you think is dispensable, तो कोई तो और आ जाएगा. That you're able to
Hmm.
दबाव the athlete little bit. This one is talking too much. चुप करो उसको, कोई तो और आ जाएगा. That to me has been the saddest part of how things have panned out in a lot of sport. But now you're seeing the opposite sort of taking place with the fact that there are that there are people coming from everywhere. So they did this survey that was done about women in sport. Aditi Mutarkar was part of this Simply Sport program, and they were doing a whole sort of a study about women in sport, and they went to 4 states: UP, Gujarat, as in the states that are the least pushing for sports excellence and so on, and Manipur, Haryana, which is the absolute opposite, the other end of the scale. So
Right.
when they went to Manipur, Aditi was talking to an athlete and she said, "Why did you take to sport? What is the thing?" So, what was it that drew you to sport? And that athlete, that girl looks at her and says, "Madam, I don't understand what you're saying." So, because she said, "My grandmother used to play football, my mother
Hmm.
used to play football. Why should I not do it?" So it was that's how much a part it was of their culture for sport to be there. And she said that was just the best answer I got. She said, "I don't understand when you ask me what drew you to sport. It is all around me. What do you mean? What drew me? I'm in it. That's part of the magic that's there in some of these places in the country that you
And it
see.
needs to grow. It needs
Oh
to
yeah,
grow.
oh,
So,
absolutely.
does it boil down to culture and commerce to make sports a success? And this is a very broad question I have for you because I think both have to play a role. We can't hide from it.
Hmm.
Just even for kabaddi, the example that you gave, it was the packaging of the kabaddi of that particular sport. It's about making a culture for that
The
sport,
culture
which
was
actually
already
grew
there.
it.
So women's, they're not doing anything, but the culture was always there. Like thousands of clubs, we'd not have thought
Yeah.
about. Because of the fact that as city people, as upper class city people, we were not thinking about this. That there is this other world that is there. So the culture is there. Culture is hugely important. And one of my favorite things that I've done, I do a little bit of it wherever I travel now, is that let me find and see what sport is happening in wherever I go, whichever part of the world,
Hmm.
part of India. And you'll see it coming up in these weird ways. You'll see that it's there. There's someone is playing something. It's not
Yes.
structured and organized, but somebody is doing something. Mostly boys.
Hmm.
Now you're seeing a lot of arrival of girls in that space, and you just need for there to be proper structures to get these kids to play more, to get more kids to play.
Hmm.
And yeah, your culture and commerce is the right mix. You have to make it viable for people to want to have lives in sport.
Correct.
So because this whole thing of the beauty of sport and the glory, no, in India, sport is livelihood. Amdani,
Hmm.
rozgar. Make sure that it's there for the athlete, and you will find they will come. You will get thousands of athletes to come. What does cricket show you? Cricket was not always
Yeah.
like this. In the 80s, again, this will sound like absolute prehistory. 1980s,
Hmm.
cricket and hockey were like this, parallel. Football was
Imagine.
slightly close, very, very big in Calcutta and Kerala and so on, slightly close behind, but in Bombay, where I grew up, cricket and hockey on par, football also pretty close.
Hmm.
And now what are we doing? Tennis, cricket were the big
Correct.
billiards, tennis,
Hmm.
cricket, big stars. And now tennis zero, cricket is wherever it is. So hockey is
So that
dropped
bit
off.
of
Trying,
massification, yeah, massification is important, and also I think keeping up with the times and keeping up with how the world plays the sport. So
correct,
I think even
correct.
in hockey, the minute the rules changed, the surface changed, you had to keep up with a very different style of the sport
So
altogether.
correct. And the people who are passionate about hockey, and there is so much passion about hockey in India, it's mad. They say that look, they took this thing away from us, which is a valid reason and excuse. And at one point, oh, we cannot afford AstroTurf. That was a 1990s, first half of 1990s. That was a standard excuse. We cannot afford AstroTurf. That was the thing that came from officials again. And but the way they treated their athletes, we won a medal at the Asian Games in 1996, a gold medal, by the way. And they sacked the coach and they sacked 5 top players. Like, how can you do this? What is going to,
Hmm.
you are not going to survive in the sport. Those athletes, they didn't want the stars to have voices and to talk. And there are many other social sort of reasons you can discuss this. But that is the new thing. I think maybe that's the next step. I don't know, that you'll see the athlete's voice needs to be heard more and needs to
Hmm.
come out, and we need to listen to them and see what they're talking
Yeah.
about. A lot of things, it's not all about, like I call it, the glory story. The glory story is
Hmm.
great, but if they say something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable, you please listen to what they have to say to you. You're hearing it, you hear those stories every day. We just had another
Hmm.
kissa in football, women's football. So yeah, so it's this whole thing that you have to make it viable for people to
Hmm.
play, not maybe to become, and you have to make sport accessible and available to for as many people as you can, just for health
So
reasons,
that it can, yeah, it
so
can
that
be
you
part of the
build
culture in the right
you like,
way.
it's like
Yeah.
that girl in Manipur said, I don't understand what you're saying.
Hmm.
So she said, by saying a word
That's
here.
a great answer. That's a
Yeah.
very encouraging answer, actually, to see.
So
But
what do you do? She said, I
uh,
don't understand what you're saying. How can I not be
but
interested?
how do you think, how important is it? Like, for example, this whole one way of looking at it is the state adoption model, like what Odisha is trying to do over
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
And I've seen the kind of infrastructure that they have developed. And now many other states are looking at it and, in a very positive sense for us, trying
yeah.
to do something similar as well. So, do you think the state model works? Do you think each state adopting certain number of sports works?
See, all this is fine. I mean, the Orissa story is great. I believe they have not see. I've seen. To me, watching a hockey match in the Kalinga Stadium is the best spectator experience an Indian spectator is going to get, because in cricket the spectator experience is absolutely third class, if not fifth
Hmm.
class. So literally, you have a ticket. You get scanned once, you walk in, and you're out there. And it's not that people don't come. Okay, they don't come in tens of thousands, but you learn how to manage crowds. So that is an
Hmm.
incredible. There's so many ways to do it, but I think they are fundamentally that the organization of sport and the structure and the federations that are there in our sport need to be uh, it needs to be improved vastly. Yeah.
Hmm.
The word is vastly and
Yeah.
improved in whichever order you wish to take it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
to me,
totally.
the failure is there. To me, the weak point, the reason why we are not as successful with the talent that we have, that's the reason. It starts and stops there. Now, a lot of
Hmm.
people say, but my federation is not like this. I know a lot of athletes that are in federations now who get very irritated with my ranting, and my ranting is consistent and across media. But there are some that are doing good work, but the percentage is very small. So you're looking at, when I'm
Hmm.
very generous, I say it's 10%. When I'm feeling very mean, I say 5. So,
Okay.
today,
It's
I'm sure
somewhere in between that.
today I'm between 5 and 10 of good work happening in most
Hmm.
federations. So that's the percentage. So that percentage, the involvement of politics in sport and whatever, we can talk about this forever. So
Hmm.
the models are fine, but the niyat of the people whose job it is to look after their athletes, to run competitions, to have seasonal calendars, to make sure young kids take to their sport, just so that the best come from there, the cream of the athletes come from there.
Hmm.
But niyat is not there, which is why we are lagging behind. The other models are in place, so that the state model is in place because there is
Yeah.
this gap, right? The My other theory is that people like you, the kind of work that you do, all your sports, private sports organizations that set up this, I'm going to help the elite athletes, your JSW, your OGQ, your Mittal's Champions Trust in the early days. They
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
came about because there was systemic failure in the
Hmm.
organization of our Olympic sports to start with.
Coming back to, your role, and you've seen all of this over the years. It's such a rich experience. But tell me, it's not always been roses, right? It's not always been you having it your way and you having the best moments. And I think people shy away from talking about the really difficult times where you're almost on the verge of saying, is this worth it? But then
No,
you do
never.
tend to come
I
back
have
to it,
never
right?
said, is
So
this worth it? I've never had this.
yeah.
I have never said it because of the fact that there's so many sports to look at. There's always something
Hmm.
else. There's always a new event happening somewhere else. I've never said, I want to leave this profession. This profession may kick me out, but I've never said, I want to go. So I've never had that,
That's great.
because I can watch, Neha, I can watch any serious competition, but it has to be serious. Do not show me
Hmm.
corporate golf. Do not show me corporate tennis. I'm not interested. Anything of two people competing at whatever competition, I will watch. If you want me to make 200 word or 2000 word report, I will make. But it has to be serious.
Amazing. So just to wrap it up, I mean, you've had such an amazing career, which continues, of course, for many, many more years to come across all these sports that we've talked about today, not just cricket, which I'm happy about.
Yeah.
But tell me, what has sports given to you? Like, if you were to just, it's very hard to answer that straight, but what do you think it's given
I
to you,
mean,
or how has it enriched your life?
enriched my life is the thing. It's
Hmm.
just it's given me a vocation. It's given me a calling. It's given me a great career in the sense of like a career with a reasonable earning that I can look after myself. I can look after my parents. I mean, it has given me everything that I never dreamt when I started that this is where I would end up. I just thought I'd do it, and I think at some point, I mean, it's just been magic, and it's every day, and it's great. And it's not like you're only writing the good stuff; you're also writing the bad stuff because a lot of bad stuff happens, and you
Yeah.
write about it. You have to look at it. You have to talk about it.
Hmm.
But it's like a never-ending source of joy, happiness, income, whatever. It's like, yeah,
A lot of emotions
inspiration.
coming
Yeah,
together. Yeah.
inspiration,
Yeah.
all of that. Inspiration, absolute irritation, all of it. It's just a never-ending source of those things.
Wonderful. So it's, I think for me too, it's always a very full, happy, wholesome day and wholesome life that comes through sports. And I'm
Yeah.
so glad to hear it from you as well. But thank you so much for being part of this. And I really hope a lot of girls are watching this and getting inspired by you. And we'll take you up on that database. I won't call it a database, but we will bring those women together and do
No,
something with them
I
as
mean, thanks,
well.
thanks so much for having me, Naya. It's been so good to be here in women in sport, and even to see so many women that are there, not as many as there could be, that to see people like you working, part of it, part of the industry, putting up with all kinds of rubbish. As journalists,
Yeah.
we tend not to put up with rubbish. Our whole this thing is that do not try. But people like you are both executors, diplomats, all kinds of logistics experts, all kinds of things that you do. It's just incredible, and to see you're there and holding your own, and good luck to all of us, I suppose. Yeah, for
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
going
And I
even
think it's for the greater good, right? It's for the athletes, and that's what I always tell myself. I remind myself every night when I have to
it's for
deal
the
with these
athletes.
difficult situations, it's for the athletes. Yeah. But
Thank
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
thank you so much.
Brilliant.